Today I've got 5 super budget, 0 rare Duskmourn Standard decks for you today. Welcome to today's video. I'm Matt, Total MTG here, and when we have a new set out, you know I like to put out lots of new budget decks for you. We brew around with some new cards. There's lots of new players, beginner players coming into Arena now and into Magic the Gathering, as a new set always brings in new players. And you know, you want something to play. We know how rough the economy is on MTG Arena. It is really, really rough getting those rare wildcards. So it's good to have something, either you can just play something different if you're a more seasoned player, but you don't want to craft those rare or mythic wildcards. You might have a lot of these cards already in your collection, but we are mixing in a lot of new of the Duskmourn House of Horror cards as well into these certain decks. They are very fun to play. I've tested them, like I say. And yeah, I think they will be, you know, something different for you to play. If you're usually playing a lot of top meta decks, these would be good to do your dailies, maybe in different colours as well. You can use them simply just for that. But as always, I hear back from the players that they take these decks and they go further up the ladder with them as well. So they can definitely be ranked with normally my budget brews. So thank you to everyone that does that and comes back to the comment section and lets me know. I really do appreciate that. Now, in the description below, I will put some suggested upgrades for some of these decks as well. So if there's any questions or, you know, any cards you know, thinking, what do I take out or anything like that, or what to add, leave it in the comment section here, and then I will always reply to everyone that does a comment, as I, you know, always try to do without a doubt. But without further ado, let's get on to the first deck. So the first deck that we have for you today is a Boros Red-White Arabella deck. This was inspired to me by one of my Patreons. Jake, thank you very much for inspiring this deck to me. Arabella, Abandoned Doll, is an absolute house of a card and an uncommon card, so great for all us budget players. When the doll attacks, it deals X damage to each opponent. You gain X life, where X is the number of creatures you control with power 2 or less. So basically what we have, a lot of creatures with power 2 or less. We have abilities to make lots of tokens, and then we have a separate win con as well if we don't get to do it with Arabella. We have the old Imodane's Recruiter that you will very much know that when this enters, creatures we control get +1/0 and haste. And if you can actually combine where this comes down and this in the same turn, it's literally sometimes just GG's. It's so good and powerful. Now, we have a package of tokens. Crawling Chorus coming in there. When it dies, it will make a token, and obviously it's 1 power as well. So a good 1-drop that will then replace itself as well in the deck. We have Carrot Cake. Enters, gain a little 1/1 white rabbit token. You get to scry, you can sack it, gain a bit of life, which sometimes is essential against those aggro decks as well, like mono red. And then you get another token as well. So another way to get tokens. Resolute Reinforcement makes 2 creatures when they come down, both with 1 power as well. Then we have some token enablers, some sorcery cards, hop to it, that will make 3 1/1 rabbits. And then we have a couple of Captain's Call in there as well. So as you can see, we have the ability in this deck to make so many tokens and go absolutely wide in that as well. We also have a couple of other cards in there. We have a bit of protection, like Lauren's Escape, that can protect preferably Arabella when it comes down, because, you know, this is the one of the, you know, the main win con of the deck, even though we do have that second one in Recruiter, like I said. So a touch of protection is good for this deck with all the removal that is currently in Standard. We have Bitter Reunion, because this potentially can give Arabella haste as well. We want to be winning as quickly as we can. We don't want our opponent the ability to actually untap and, you know, have that removal and kill it straight away. If they're tapped out and we have a turn 2 Bitter Reunion on there, we could then sack it when Arabella comes down with the amount of creatures on there. And it's another way to give it haste as well, which I think is what's really needed in this heavy removal meta. You want abilities to actually go, when this goes down, is to attack straight away. We then have 4 Caseways, because it's good removal. With the amount of tokens we're making, we will be able to just clear the field of some really big blockers in there. Big creatures are around at the moment in Standard, and this can come down with all our tokens down and do that. It does solved and give creatures +1/0, so you've got to remember with, you know, if you're putting that down and Imodane's Recruiter down and you've got solved creatures, then their power is 3, so the power 2 or less won't be the same. So you've got to work around that and play, you know, not making sure that when you attack with Arabella that you still do have those creatures if this is solved and they're not too big. But you know, when they're attacking with 3 power and you've got a lot of them on there, that's still just going to be doing lots of damage. So sometimes you won't need the Arabella for that because you literally are just swarming, going wide with this. So this is a take on a token deck building around Arabella, and there's lots of different ways, lots of different 1-drops you can play with this. It's a card that when you craft it as an uncommon, you will be able to build variants of this deck, going more, maybe not down the token route with lots of 2-power creatures. There is some really cool cards that you can do to update this that I will leave down below, that will just, you know, enhance this deck. Lands, I'm not going to put the update of lands in the description, because if you've just got the rare lands that are better than these, they just have to go automatically dead. No matter how many you've got, they would just always be better than these, because, you know, a lot of them won't come in untapped. But we want to be, you know, we're playing 2 colours. We don't want to mess out on that. And we've got the new land Carnival that sometimes will come in untapped. So this is like a budget player's dream, this card. And it's just a really cool card. Now, you know, a lot of the time for this sort of deck, it's going to come in tapped probably, because late game it might not do as much for us. But it's still, you know, these new lands definitely have to go in budget decks, and, you know, potentially coming in untapped for us is really, really good, you know, doing 2 colours. We then have bluffs in there, 1 damage to each opponent because we're an aggressive aggro deck. If you feel like you need the life gain land instead of this one, put that in there as well. You know, you could even put 4 in there, but I'm worried about stuff coming, you know, I don't want too many untapped lands coming in, so we do have the risk of basics there as well. So this is the first deck, Boros Arabella. It's very aggro and very fun to play, but let's get on to the next deck. So our next deck, and we have a couple of these, and they will mix in various cards. So if you like auras, this, you know, this deck and the following deck that we have that I will show do cross over some cards, and I do like doing that with some of my budget decks, because if you've got, you know, a few decks with crossover cards, it means you might have 2 decks that are easier to build, and you don't have to, you know, it's not like loads of new wild cards for one, then loads of different ones for another. So we do have a crossover here. This card reprinted in Standard, Ethereal Armor, is just an absolute house of a card, and it's a common card for me in this. I've got an older version of this because I just didn't want to craft the new version. This is a reprint, so because I've got you know, an older collection here, when you transfer this across, it might not have this in your collection because it might transfer this one, but this is in Duskmourn, so this is just my version of it that I play, so I didn't have to, you know, waste some more wild cards. But this will give +1/1 for each enchantment you control and gives it first strike. So we want a lot of enchantments. We've got 20 enchantments in the deck in this one. It's a very low CMC, 1.4, so we're going for 22 lands. And basically what you want to be doing in this one is building up a creature. Now, new set, Scavenger, this is from Duskmourn. Whenever an enchantment you control enters, whenever you fully unlock a room, put a 1/1 counter on target creature. So, very good with the amount of enchantments on there. We have the ability to build up a massive creature. We then also have Toadstool Admirer. Now, what I went for in this theme is having cards that were a little bit more awkward to remove. So, Ward 2 on this just, you know, helps it stay out the way of opponents' removal. I feel like Ward will be good when you're building an enchantment deck. So we've got this Toadstool Admirer that we can put in there, build it up. Like I said, a little bit harder to remove as well. And then we have Atomical Honor Guard that also has Ward 2, but power 3/1. So a 2-drop with very nice stats, and again, very awkward to remove. And the same for this one, Cat Rebel. The Leonin Lightbringer is a 3/2 with War 2, and as long as it's equipped, it gets +1/1. So this can be built up and then be a 4/3 straight away, War 2, you know, awkward to deal with. Now, we're having protection this, even with the War 2, because you really do rely on building up these like 1 or 2 creatures to get the job done. We've got Lauren's Escape in this one again. That is another crossover from the previous deck. Hexproof, Indestructible, so helps against Wraths. Doesn't get around, obviously, Sunfall. Not a lot of cards do. Sunfall, if you don't know, is a 5-mana Wrath that exiles all the cards. So it doesn't get around that, but lots of pinpoint removal and any other Wraths. This will help save our creature. New as well, Sheltered by Ghosts. Exile target non-land permanent it controls by when it enters the battlefield, so you get to put this onto your creature. It gets +1/0 lifelink and another Ward 2. So we are building up just absolutely so much protection for our creatures here. It is unbelievable, and it is really hard once you get your creature on there to remove. Now, people can just put obviously little blockers once we get those massive things, which is why the deck runs Audacity, because it gives it trample and a +2/0 buff, and it gets us to draw a card if it does eventually go to the graveyard. great one drop, and this is, you know, an integral part to the deck because there'll be lots of little creatures stood in front of us, and we need our trample to get over to help you win the games. So this is an important card to build up onto your creatures. More in the deck as well, we have Shardmaze Rescue. This enchanted creature gets +1/1, but it also gives it hexproof. So if you don't have any of the other protection hand, we've got more. We've got so much protection, but this is a protection in an enchantment aura that will buff up with Ethereal Armor. Obviously great for this because it will trigger that, and flash it in 1 mana, and it will give hexproof to any spot removal of one of our creatures. Last card to talk about is Hunter's Talent. When this enters, target creature control deals damage equal to its power, so we hopefully will have a lot of, you know, powerful creatures. And the level 2 is another way to give our creatures trample if we don't pull Audacity. Level 3, we can, you know, trigger this. I've never actually managed to do this before. I've actually even, you know, before I've won the game, I've never, never had to do the level 3. But the level 3 is still nice because it's a way to keep triggering at the beginning of your next step to draw a card as well. So very good card, but the first level and level 2 is very good on this. Land base, we don't want to be missing the lands here, so we're still playing 4 of these. Great new budget lands. We then have Heath that comes in and does 1 damage. We've got Blossoming Sands as well. And then we've got 5 plains and 5 forests. So we do run some of the tapped land in this because we have early protection, and we have a lot of low mana spells. So, you know, we're not necessarily worrying about a turn 3 play and it having to come in untapped, because once we get our, you know, single mana creature down, we could potentially have protection, and then we can just slowly build up and take over the game. But let's get onto the other deck, which is another Auras deck. So this one is a blue-white Auras deck, and as you can see, we have a lot of crossover in this deck, so you potentially could build the 2 decks. Ethereal Armor is the base of the deck again. We've got Lauren's Escape in this as well. Optimistic Scavenger is just an absolute automatic include for any kind of enchantment deck. And then we have the Rescue as well, the Protection Flash in this. So there's quite a few crossover cards. And there's one more, sorry, I forgot about Sheltered by Ghost. So these are going to be your core no matter whether you go, you know, you can do a Boros version. This is obviously Azorius. We just seen the previous version as well that you can go with that one, Green-White Selesnya. This runs on a different type of way. I've been told to, you know, we get this to use Glimmer. Now, Inquisitive Glimmer makes enchantment spells cost 1 less to cast. Unlock costs obviously 1 less to cast, but we only do run one of the new enchantment rooms in this deck, but this can make all the enchantments cheaper. Now, while we do have a lot of 1-drops, it's not really going to affect that, but we do have other cards like Fey Flight that potentially could cost 1 blue mana. This will give enchanted creature hexproof for 20 turn, another good way to flash. These cards are really good for these type of decks, and flying is a form of evasion as well, so it really can do a good job in here. We have Ossification, good removal, come down, potentially 1 mana as well with the Inquisitor down. Even at 2 mana, it just deals with stuff. And it's an enchantment, so it builds up the ticks for Ethereal Armor when it's on a creature as well. Gremlin Tamer. Whenever enchantment you control enters, you create a 1/1 red gremlin token. So you can go wide with this, build up some blockers, maybe go wide a bit further. It's nice. It just adds more bodies to the board that potentially you could add, you know, other stuff to. It doesn't have to be to these enchantment creatures, but it still gives, you know, it will give a presence for you on the board, which is, you know, which I think is pretty cool. New as well, Fear of Imposters. Flash, when it enters, counter target spell. It control a Manifest Dread, but for Flash, it's a very good, you know, it's a counter spell for us, which goes in for the colours. Potentially just double blue, so like counter spell, actual OG counter spell magic, but you will Manifest Dread for them. But we're not really too worried about that. You know, if you're stopping something humongous coming down, they might be able to turn something up, but then, you know, I still think it's a very good inclusion to this and adds a bit of control magic to it as well, which this does as well. Bottomless Pool will trigger an enchantment for Ethereal and anything like that, and all our other triggers. When you unlock this door, you can return a creature. So we can put this down and return a creature to owner's hand, get something out of the way. Pay 5 when one or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, you can draw a card. So this is my version of it. There is a, you know, you might be able to just, there's a few other different types of enchantments that you could bring in here. But for me, this deck has been working very well as is. Land base, yet again, we're going with Tranquil Cove. We're going for Arroyo, deals 1 damage. And then we have our 13 or less life, potential untapped land, abandoned camp grove, then some basics. And a couple of demolition fields in this one as well, as we're adding in more of a control deck. But if you feel like you don't want the demolition fields, I didn't have it in the Selesnya one. But if you feel like, this is just, sometimes I feel like Demolition Field is a very good card to put in there, so which you can take it out and add in more basics if you want. But, maybe this actually should go to 1, and we should have 1 in the Selesnya as well. So that would be my advice. See if you come across any of those creature lands. I think when I was testing this one, I did for some reason, so I put Demolition Field straight in it. But I didn't really need it for the previous deck. But this is a very fun deck, and hopefully you combine the two. But let's get on to our 4th deck. So before we get to our final deck, which is a control deck, we have a Golgari Delirium. This is a fun brew, and it can definitely... it has really cool interactions and everything like that. From my testing, I will, be totally honest with you, it's not as consistent as like the Aura decks or the aggressive aggro deck, but if you want to play something really cool, then this is the deck for you. You can upgrade this in definitely different ways. This, for me, say its name, mill 3 cards, you may return a creature or land card from your graveyard to your hand. Exile this card and 2 others. Now, you can search for Altanuk. Now, we have this. It's a massive finisher. It's a 9/9 trample. When it becomes a target of spell or ability and opponent controls, you get to draw a card, so when they remove it. But for 7 mana, it's a 9/9. And that interaction of trying to pull this off was what drew me to this deck. And you can obviously ramp out a little bit, and, it's just a massive beater. If this gets to stay on the field, it's not going to take too many swings for this to win for you. But we do have a Delirium build here. Lots of new Delirium creatures. We have Beastie here, can't attack or blossom unless there are 4 more card types, and it's very easy to get that in there. You're milling a card at the beginning of your upkeep. It's a 3/3 for 1 mana. Really, really cool card. We then have Brood Spinner in it, a 2 mana 2/3, has reach. When it enters Surveil 2, so surveilling, we look at the cards, put them into the graveyard, but you can build up our Delirium package without a doubt. And you can pay 6 and then create a number 1/1 black insect flying tokens. And I've done this multiple times with the creatures going into the graveyard. Now we have 24 creatures in total in this deck. And this can just fill up the battlefield with flyers. It's so, so cool. And it's just value, 2 mana. And look what you get for 2 mana as well. You've got a creature with bigger stats, you've got reach, and you get to surveil 2. And it has a late ability as well for us. We then have Spine Seeker Centipede. Enters the battlefield, you get to search for a basic land, reveal it, put into your hand. It's just got, so getting some of the Delirium. There wasn't much, actually, many creatures to build around for this format in budget, in commons and uncommons, but there was just enough to build this deck. And, this was, for me, an archetype that I wanted to build and have an interesting deck as well. We've got Honest Rusting in there. This just returns target creature card from your graveyard to your hand, and creature spells cost 1 less to cast. So we can use the ability of discarding Altanuk, Thrushguard, return a target land card, battlefield tapped, helps you do that. And then Rusting can go and get it back in our hand as well. So we have some reanimation in this deck. Thresher, if there are 4 more card types among cards, go look at the top card of life as land card, put it on the battlefield. If you don't put it in your hand, a 5/4 for 4 mana, absolute beatdown creature in this. We have some big stompiness here. Last creature to talk about is Skyfisher Spider. This has reach. Whenever you sacrifice another creature, you do destroy target non-land permanent, and when the spider dies, you gain 1 life for each creature card in your graveyard. Really good effect, good creature to bring back. Where ability to, sack stuff like Haywire Might. When this dies, you gain 2 life, and also has removal on it as well. So a good fodder for the spider to actually, kill something else. And last in the deck, we have some removal. So go for the throat. Really cool. We know about that. Nowhere to run. -3/3 flash enchantment, and then takes away the ward abilities and hexproof from opponents. So very sweet. For our last card, great removal. Delirium 2 less to cast, so it potentially could just cost the Golgari, destroy target non-land permanent. Instant speed, perfect for this deck, and just premium removal that a lot of the time will just cost you 2 mana to remove, anything. Really, really cool. And in this deck, the land base is a little bit different because we've got Escape Tunnel in there. ability to, potentially bring back lands, escape tunnel, and you can make a target creature 2 or less unblockable. Not really worried too much about that, obviously, because we don't have much that can trigger that. But we do have a way to get lands back. So Demolition Field as well could be recurred. And then we have our 13 or less Life Cemetery, as we're doing in all these budget decks that are 2 colours, and then some basics in there as well. But this deck is super fun. When you get it kicking off and all the synergies come together, it will feel so good. Give this a go if this is your fun. You want to play a fun type of deck, and let me know. We can add some more power cards to this. I will put them in the description below. But fun archetype this, and definitely worth a go. Let's get on to the final deck. Now, it wouldn't be a budget video unless I did a mono black control, and we get a couple of beaters in mono black control now. So we have 2 new beaters. Spectral Snatcher. The ward is discard a card. It's a big 6/5 and has swamp cycling, so it can be cycled if need be. And then we have a Vile Mutilator, a 6/5 flying trample. Additional cost to cast a spell, sack a creature or enchantment. When it enters, each opponent sacks a non-token enchantment, then sacrifices a non-token creature as well. But it's the finisher that we wanted for a budget version of mono black control, because we can still go down the discard route as well. So we can still have Bandit's Talent as a potential win con by opponents, discarding cards and everything like that. We've got Hopeless Nightmare in there. It just disrupts opponents. So cards like this are really good, and especially, when we've got Bandit's Talent in there as well, which we can get them down to less cards. We've got potentially the ability to draw cards, and then we can obviously drain with the level 2 on this as well. But it is having lots of removal in this. New card, Withering Torment, means we can start to deal with enchantments, and this will do creatures as well. We've got a removal spell that gives us a little bit of life that black, usually gets pained for life, but this will help us in certain matchups like, the aggro decks and everything like that, mono red and everything like that. And then we just have, a lot of removal. We have a single cut down in there. We've got a couple of Bitter Triumph as well. We've got Go for the Throat. We've got our new card, Nowhere to Run. We've just got so much removal. We've already spoke about Torment, and then Glistening Deluge as well to deal with those green-white decks that, that are just really awkward to build, build around, like the rabbit decks and stuff like that. This can sweep up them. It gives them the additional +2/2, which really does help, which is why we're playing Deluge in this deck. Sack Fodder. We've got Greedy Freebooter that can be sacked to draw cards with Conviction, or the sack a creature with Vile. Then we get to Scry, Treasure Token as well, to help build up to the bigger creatures that we might need for this deck. And then we got another cool creature, because this will trade off with practically anything. So having the Skull Dweller in there is just pseudo removal as well, because people don't want to attack into it. You don't block the early blockers unless you really need to, but this can just peck away and do a bit of damage as well. I've had games where I've not won with the poison in this, but I've got to like 8 counters in a game because I was just removing everything they had, and then I just kept attacking with one of these, and I got another one on, and I got so close to just winning with that. But yeah, in the end, the opponent just quit, so it was still a very good win. But this is a proper removal deck. Land base, the single Demolition Field in this one as well. Draw Spits, just added card draw, and then 20 swamps. So the land base on this one is very easy, and you don't actually have to craft too many commons and uncommons for this one. But yeah, this is mono black control. Not more to say about this. It is just absolute removal, keeping everything clear as much as you can, deplete an opponent's hands, and then smash it in with your Vile Mutilator, or potentially your Snatcher as well. So there was 5 super budget decks for you, always 0 rares. Like I said, upgrade suggestions will be in the description. Any comments on them, or any help you need, or any thoughts, please put it in the comment section. If you enjoyed today's video, just let me know. You want to see more of these? Do you want to see some gameplay? I will say that I will reiterate gameplay if it gets some views. We put a video out this week, didn't do too good. was a little bit disappointing. But, you know, I'm not just going to give up on that. So just let me know what, you know, more of these videos that you'd like to see. If you want to get any of these cards in paper, I will have to mention my great sponsors, Cardmarket. A lot of you in Europe will know them already. You can follow the link down there and that will support the channel as well. And big thank you to all my Patreons as well. If you want to become a member of the Total MTG Patreon army, I would very much appreciate that. But anyway, you lot take care. See you on the next video.